Um, with great pleasure, it's time to switch from transport to energy and buildings. And I'm really, really glad that we get to hear from Simon. As many of you will know well, Simon navigates this huge issue perfectly with an equal measure of his head and his heart. Simon knows that we're not going to fix human-induced climate change by talking about thermal resistivity or kilowatt hours alone. So Simon, the floor is yours, sir.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Richard. Just going to share my screen. I hope you can all see that okay. So it's a pleasure to be here, and Richard, thank you very much indeed for those kind words of introduction. My name is Simon Ross. I am the Director of Marches Energy Agency and a resident of Much Wenlock. So it's a real pleasure to be introducing this theme on behalf of the conference today. So there is a complexity to all of this. I don't think I'm necessarily going to have all the technical answers that John had before in the transport theme. And I was really struck by one of the comments that came through in our ice-breaking session. We've got to say yes to climate change, and then we're going to work out how to proceed. And I have to be honest, that's rather how I feel about my sort of slot here today. So I'm absolutely saying yes. Do I have all the answers? Probably not, but we've certainly got some really interesting ideas here. So we've got 4 themes for you briefly this morning, in which we'll be discussing and developing both this afternoon and longer term over the autumn and winter, we hope, towards our spring conference next year. The first of those themes is around influencing, awareness raising and education. So for this particular theme, really, we want to develop the notion that we have to do more to help others to take positive action. We're really interested in town and parish councils in particular. We're interested in local faith organisations, in the NHS, in education establishments, and with local businesses as well. But we recognise there's probably a lot more that we can be doing to help and support others to take positive action. This afternoon, we're going to hear briefly from 2 really interesting people who've been developing this work. From Mike Watkins at Bishop's Castle, where he's been working very closely with the town council there to develop the climate and ecological action plan for the town. And also from Gordon Coppock from Herefordshire. And we're going to hear briefly about the amazing work that he and colleagues have been undertaking through the Herefordshire Green Network, where they've been supporting and engaging nearly 50% of all local councils in Herefordshire on this theme. So that's really fantastic to hear, and we're going to hear both from those a bit more this afternoon. Our second theme that we've come up with is community action on energy generation. And we feel that really, given our ambitions for net zero carbon, there is huge need here as well. The blue table on the right is not perfect, but it is work that's been undertaken by Robert Saunders from Wellington, and he's really modelling a range of options to really stimulate debate as much as anything else. And he is suggesting in this work that in order to be hitting 100% renewables by 2030, if that's the way we wish to go, you can see some sort of indication there of the number of investment and measures and systems that need to be installed to help us get there. Solar farms, PV, wind turbines as well. There is huge need here, but in order to unlock the scale of the ambition that's needed, it does need community buy-in. And this really is where the community action on energy generation comes in. We feel we need to be making choices. There needs to be debate at a much more local level in communities about some of the options that we need to be looking to develop and bring forward to achieve some of the targets we need to see. We also recognise as well that there are significant issues around grid constraint and around the costs associated with that as well. So there's a lot of work that needs to be taking place in the background, especially with Western Power Distribution as the network operator in relation to that. But I think really just finally at this point to say that there are interesting things that are starting to happen. A couple of quick examples, the community-owned hydro on the River Team in Ludlow, which is generating electricity locally today now in local ownership. The Shropshire and Telford community energy aspirations to be buying a commercial farm, a commercial solar farm up in Whitchurch in North Shropshire, and looking to create local ownership of that scheme and to make a significant community chest available for investment to support local projects. And then my final thought really in terms of interesting things that is happening is the example perhaps of Shropshire Council, who have invested in rooftop solar on schools in Church Stretton, in Bishop's Castle, in Ludlow, in Clibberry Mortimer, and in Bridgnorth as well. So I know there'll be concerns about Shropshire Council, but there is stuff that they are undertaking, which I think is worthy of note at this point, and they should be congratulated and supported for as well. Our next theme that we want to develop again this afternoon and over the autumn is the idea of retrofit for all. The focus really here is on homes, not businesses or non-domestic buildings, and the little table on the right shows the by parliamentary constituency the average energy performance certificate rating for all the parliamentary constituencies in the UK. You can work out where Ludlow, South Shropshire is, and from that you can see that 10 to 20% of homes are currently band F or band G, which are the most inefficient, most poorly performing homes in terms of energy efficiency. The data you can see from the top right is 2015, but to be honest, there hasn't been a significant change in relation to that development. And so there is still a lot of work to be done with cold homes, expensive heating fuels, difficult to treat properties, and many of those are older and historic and of significance as well, and need to be treated with extreme caution and sensitivity. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. We do recognise as well as a group that many of us are experts by experience, that a lot of people within South Shropshire have undertaken measures and installed measures from which they have learnt at home. And examples could be those who've installed ground source heat pump, surface laid, or with boreholes, perhaps those who've installed battery storage combined with PV systems. And there I'm thinking of two people I know, one of whom has had a very positive experience and one of whom has had a very negative experience. And we need to learn from and understand both the positive and the negative, and to make sure by sharing that learning that actually other people don't fall into the same traps as well. So we recognise that many people are experts by experience, and we need to learn and develop and grow around that knowledge base. We also know that there are trusted advisors out there, and there are trusted installers. We also know as well through our work that actually maybe some installers are less trustworthy than others. And really what we want to look to develop over the autumn and winter is a much stronger understanding of those sources of advice which are positive and well received, and getting people to the right place, and also perhaps working with those installers who are of good quality, and through that process to encourage economic activity and employment opportunities for them, because we want to be supporting the good installers so they can be employing more people locally and providing jobs and economic activity within South Shropshire as well. We also recognise that there's a lot of good work going on nationally in terms of wider retrofit models, and we want to be exploring this over the autumn and winter as well. Some examples briefly include the Energy Sprung approach, which has come from Holland, passive house approach, which we know Connexus Housing is playing with, both in terms of new build in Much Wenlock, where I live, but also with a European funded project to model 130 homes in Herefordshire and Shropshire around the passive house approach. We're aware that places like the Manchester Carbon Co-op are really doing really exciting and ambitious work on this space. Parity Projects in London, the Low Carbon Hub in Oxford, and also the West Midlands Combined Authority, we do know as part of their COVID-19 recovery plans, are looking very seriously at West Midlands wide both fuel poverty work for the householders who can't pay, but also a retrofit as well as a boost to the economy going forward on the back of COVID-19. We're also interested in new build and the quality performance of those. If anybody knows, are new builds actually delivering and being fit for purpose for the future? I'd love to know. There must be some research or post-occupancy evaluation that's been undertaken in relation to that. And really my final point on this is it's a challenge which I want to develop this afternoon and to place before you, which is to see if we can develop a local retrofit model for homes, bringing together all of those, some of those aspects that I've been talking about, because there is an enormous opportunity here in terms of carbon reduction and investment and job creation. On a similar theme as well, we also want to try and support good business practice. and to develop our understanding of businesses that are fitted measures that are working, energy efficiency measures and renewable energy technologies. Examples perhaps could include Ranford Sawmill just outside Bishop's Castle, or Hobson's Brewery, where almost a decade ago they installed a wind turbine and ground source heat pumps to help with the brewing process there at Hobson. So there'll be other businesses as well. We'd like to, again, understand who those are, learn from them and help promote them as well. Any new low carbon office builds? We'd love to find out about those. How effective are they being in relation to net zero carbon ambitions by 2030? It would be good to hear about that. And crucially as well, our two infrastructure organisations who are crucial to this as well, Western Power Distribution, particularly in relation to generating new renewable energy and putting that into the grid and the constraints that we have in relation to that. And also Cadent as well, and I'd love to know about their plans more for the introduction of hydrogen into the grid as a form of low carbon heating. So I've got two final slides just to end with. Both are visions and or challenges and or opportunities, and are framed in quite slightly different ways, but I want to share both of them with you because they feel to me subtly different but important. So this first one again is from the Centre for Alternative Technology. It's from the same document, Zero Carbon Britain, that John was mentioning earlier on. And on the left hand side you can see the chart showing energy use currently in 2017 and the aspiration that we need to be doing to get to, in their case, zero carbon by 2030. And for that, we're looking at a 60% reduction in current energy demand. And then that leaves a rump of energy that we still need. And that's the bit that we've then got to apply the renewables against in order to generate the renewables capacity for that bit. So a couple of numbers there in the top right-hand corner: 40,000 homes, broadly speaking, 7,500 businesses, 100 plus public buildings, 50,000 cars. There is something that's sitting here which currently doesn't yet exist in terms of the size of the investment needed, the opportunities it creates in terms of jobs and local economic activities to move towards net zero carbon. So there is something here which is really interesting. My final slide is taking a slightly different approach to this, and this is from the work of Cristina Figueras and her new book. And she was the architect, the ambassador for the Paris Agreement on Climate Change in December 2015. And this is my understanding of her recently published book. So on the right-hand side, she's arguing by 2050, what do we want? Do we want a better world, or do we want a world, and I quote her, of unbearable pain? In order to achieve, presumably, the better world, because I'm sure that's what we all want, we need to be hitting 50% reductions in carbon emissions by 2030, based upon 2020 levels. So we're into that decade now. If we're going to do that, we need to be looking at a 7.5% reduction every year in carbon emissions based upon 2020 levels. And again, I quote her in terms of the scale of the ambition that's needed for that, and it's unprecedented. So moving back to the left of that, we can see that actually the COP26 meeting in Glasgow in November next year, which our government is hosting, is going to be absolutely crucial to that, because out of that has to come something which is going to give us the reduction rates that we need in order to hit that 2030 target of a 50% reduction. On the global scale, very briefly, we're aware of the external pressures of Trump, etc., working against that. We are aware, working for it, of Weather, Extinction Rebellion, Greta Thunberg, and we are aware, Christina says as well, of an alignment at the international level of policy, of technology, where costs of measures are coming down, and the finance as well, really, as those with the money are starting to think about how they can be investing sensibly to support this agenda. She's also saying that there are internal pressures that perhaps we could be looking to place into the UK government in relation to COP26. And I really see our work in South Shropshire over the coming weeks and months as sitting in relation to that. But the final thing she also invites us to do is to make a choice. And I just want to share very briefly with you my take on this. So in the next minute or so, I just want to sort of let you know that I have made a choice to this, and it's to actively support and to try and work while I can towards a better world in 2050. To say it's a choice is perhaps a little bit disingenuous, because actually I don't really feel it was a choice. It was something that I've been sort of propelled into. And on the back of that, I've had to face a complexity. I've had to face a grief, a pain, a sense of anger, disbelief, tiredness. And yet somehow through that as well, there has been a deeper sense for me of something, a very clear voice saying, you've got to keep going at this, Simon. And gradually, you know, my confidence has grown. That doesn't require a multi-million-pound investment, nor is it static. It shifts. Some days it's not there, other days it's very strong, but there is a direction of travel for me, which is to deepen and become more creative. And increasingly, as somebody who has committed to this, I have to learn to trust it, and I have to learn to give it permission to go there and to use it as a place of rest and recharging as well. These are quite difficult things for me to say, but I feel it's important to do so. And perhaps maybe as well to say to you, maybe there's something open for all of us to be exploring in greater detail, because we've got work here, not just till 3 o'clock today, and not to a spring conference next year, but into COP26 in November, to 2030 and out to 2050, by which time I'm going to be 81. So there is, you know, there's something much deeper going on here, which I wanted to share with you briefly as well. And on that note, I'm going to finish.
Fabulous, Simon. Thank you, and thank you for sticking to time as well. So yeah, we've got some really good questions coming in, quite similar in nature. So I'm going to call Alan, Wilson and Kath from Sustainable Bridgnorth to join together to ask your similar question to Simon.
Okay, I'd be grateful if you could tell us, in view of the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategies project that's running at present for retrofitting, when the outcome comes, which is in July 21, when they decide which is the best way to retrofit a house, will we have sufficient qualified past 2035 people available to do the work? Because people will, once they realize it's achievable, will be knocking on the door to get this done, especially those that are switched on to it.
And Kath, do you just want to chip in with your question too?
Yes, please. Yeah, actually it's quite personal as well. We've recently moved into a new house and we want to do some work on it. And what we want to find out is a list of trusted installers and suppliers. And that's something we've had a bit of difficulty with. So we wondered if there's a list anywhere of these advisors and suppliers and installers.
Okay, shall I take both those questions now, Richard?
Please, Simon. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. So PAS 2035, and are there enough installers around? Well, I think that's a very good question. From our personal experience, we have seen that the installer industry has been absolutely hammered through varying shifts in the policy landscape, which have seen over several years installers rushing to benefit from the latest opportunity, only for that to close 6 months later. And if you're running a business, it's a flipping nightmare to work out how you're going to try and grow a business for. It hasn't helped with COVID-19, and to be honest, you know, we have seen a lot of businesses have furloughed a lot of staff. Any economic activity around any form of retrofit completely went on hold. April, May, June, it started to open up again, July, August, September. We've now got the Green Homes Grant Scheme in terms of the vouchers coming on stream from very possibly tomorrow, certainly the end of this month. And you know, we as a charity have been asking around. We're trying to build a network of local-ish installers who we have worked with on several years, who we know and trust, who are PAS 2035 registered, and we're assembling that at the moment. We've also been asking around for those who are Microgeneration Certification Scheme accredited, and we went to 10 localish across the West Midlands installers. We had one response saying, good luck finding anybody, we're absolutely snowed under. So I think what we've got here with the Green Homes grants is another sprint you know, for an enormous amount of money being spent, and then it's all going to go, you know, again fairly quickly. So again, it's that kind of boom bust scenario that we've seen for many years. I mean, my view, Alan, is that if we're serious about this, we need to be recognizing that sort of culture, and we need to be supporting those good local businesses to put stability in place, which allows us to gradually build, gradually train, gradually develop and refine over a period of time. I'm talking 2 to 3 years rather than 2 to 3 decades. Any sort of, you know, a really good quality installer base who can deliver against some of these targets. The other question about trusted installers, again, really from our, you know, there are, again, it's a very varied picture. I think, Kath, was that your question? You know, there are, through our work, which is mostly around fuel poverty, we know that there are some very really competent installers, and we also know that there are a number of cowboys as well who come into the market, and part of our role is trying to sort the wheat from the chaff. If you're looking for more of a householder approach, there are a number of architectural practices around if you've effectively got a shell that you can play with. And there's a couple of architectural practices that I would suggest. Tesha, who are up on Wenlock Edge, a mile from me, Google them, TESHA, are supporting householders now around the Corvedale to be doing a deep retrofit, and they take a healthy building approach, which is wonderful to see. In terms of the advice, we at MEA do a lot of work that we can in the policy landscape as it is around fuel poverty. It is piecemeal, it's not as good as I would like it to be, and really my challenge over the autumn and winter is, can we just try and really consolidate this as much as possible, and by the spring conference next year to have something that just feels really joined up and starting to get professional in terms of being robust, and we can deliver against it. So I hope that helps.
Just ask a quick, Mike, can I just, sorry, Richard, can I just ask a quick one? Do you think, talking to Gavin from the education in respect of retraining people who have been displaced through unemployment, through COVID-19, by talking to our MPs to push Mr. Gavinson to put money into that direction of engaging people to be trained up in these skill shortages that we're going to face? Would that be a good move?
It's above our pay scale, but I do know that certainly at the West Midlands Combined Authority level, so I know that Andy Street and his team in Birmingham are looking at you know, significant West Midlands wide retrofit opportunities, and part of their agenda, I know, is a reskilling. And part of the problem we have seen, and the reason it's so difficult, is because there's just been so little stability in the landscape. And you know, for businesses who are, you know, for whom would be absolutely central to that reskilling role, are you going to invest the time and the effort and the money to get the people in, to train them up, when actually the policy response you're responding to is going, you know, in danger of going in 6 months' time or a year's time? So so yeah, those conversations are happening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan and Kath. Jane Cullen, could you ask your question, please?
Thank you, Richard. I'd like to ask Simon if he can foresee a way in which the education system could be involved in generating more interest and more recruits to these to the greener industries to do with building. I don't mean just ask schools to do more, but it seems to be a cultural shift that is needed here.
Yes, undoubtedly. And I have for many years had thoughts along the lines of I would love to be trotting down the road in Shrewsbury to the Sixth Form College, to SCAT, and I would love to be having conversations with the people who design the courses there about the size and the scale of the retrofit that is needed. Pre-COVID, I get the bus to work in Shrewsbury, and it's normally full of Sixth Form students. And I look at them and I think, you know, there's got to be something, given the size and the scale of what we're looking at here, there has got to be something which allows young lads and lasses to be coming out of the Sixth Form colleges, to be having local careers which are stable, which allow them to contribute to this agenda. I also think that there is a lot more that could be done in schools. My eldest is 19. I sketched out his GCSE syllabus a couple of years ago. And just about every subject, apart from English literature, had some form of climate change in it, which was just fantastic. But then the question then becomes, how do you kind of join those dots up, and how do you really embed that in a secondary school culture? You know, I suppose another quick example of how much work there might be to do in relation to that. My daughter's 14. She was in school the other day, and she was asked whether or not they got any PV panels. Anybody in the class? One hand went up, which is my daughter's, and her friend said she was posh. So I mean, it's just, you know, there is so much opportunity here, Jane, as there is all of it, but there's so much work to be done to be trying to join up the thinking and get in there and start shaking it up a bit.
Thank you.
Thanks both. Tony Green. Are you out there, Tony?
Yeah, I'm back now. Simon, you've covered some of the things about the Green Homes Fund. If there's anybody in South Shropshire that wants to try and get hold of that fund, where's the best place for them to go? What are the details?
Okay, it depends on who you are. If you're able to pay, like I suspect probably most of us are, your best mechanism is going to be to go to the the Simple Energy Advice website and probably just work it through. There's a free phone number there, and you probably need to give them a call. If you are struggling with your energy costs, or you really can't afford, you know, you're probably in the can't pay category, then you're very welcome to give Keep Shropshire Warm a call, 0800 112 3743. And it's a council-run service that we deliver, and we will be actively supporting people this winter from South Shropshire who don't have access to the internet, and you know, who will just frankly look at the website and just not engage with it at all, because you know, from a fuel poverty perspective, we're really concerned that what's on offer here is just really difficult for people to engage with. We are aware that there are a number of localish contractors who are PAS 2035 and therefore registered for the programme. The nearest one I can think of off the top of my head is in Clibberry Mortimer, a guy called Andy Perkins, who runs a company called Easy Solar. And I know, I mean, Andy's been knocking around for a decade plus, and is well trusted. You know, there could be others, you know, Richard Hill, who's been, you know, operating in this space for a long time. I don't know if he's PAS 2035 qualified, and therefore whether or not he could have access to the funding. So it's, you know, I think probably your best bet is you've got to go to the website or just give the free phone number a call, unless you're struggling with a cold home, in which case give us a call and we'll help you through it.
Great. Thanks, Tony. Chris Welsh, your question, please.
Oh, right. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I was very interested that you mentioned passive house homes. In my own research for putting in a submission for the local plan, I've been looking for passive house examples in the county. Obviously came to the Much Wenlock one, but couldn't find any others, which rather surprised me. So one part of my question is that the only example of residential housing to passive house standards in the county? And I think that was with the backing of a housing association. So my second part of the question is, how can and should we expect passive house buildings to be financed? And finally, on the similar sort of point, I understand that there are new government regulations coming into the standards of house buildings that will come into effect, I think, by 2025. And the type of anecdotal comments I've had is that, for example, the Ironbridge development, although those houses might not be built or started to be built by 2025, the planning applications for them will go in before 2025. So in other words, they will not have to be built to the new standards that are coming along. So I just want to know if you know anything about that, and will the new government standards be passive house standards, or will they be below them? Thank you. Sorry, that's a bit of a number of questions there.
Okay, great. Well, I can just see, actually, yeah, there are, Chris, that's fine. I mean, I can just see Robert Saunders has popped up and said that Wrekin Housing Trust is looking at a new passive house development. So perhaps have a quick chat, have a look at chat about that. I'm not aware of anything else at scale. Tony Green, I think you did actually mention another one the other day, but how are we going to fund it? So that's interesting as well. So Chris, you're right. So the Passive House new build in Much Wenlock is funded by Connexus Housing as part of their new build programme. They've also got funding, European funding, to be, and they're delivering a project to use Passive House retrofit standards, it's called Enefit, to model and retrofit 130 homes in Herefordshire and Shropshire. And they're on the cusp, subject to COVID-19, of a further 100 homes in Shropshire as well. And Connexus are going, well, if we quite like this and the feedback from tenants is good, our investment programme is worth something like £1 billion out to 2050. Perhaps we need to be thinking seriously about our learning from that project and stick it into what they call the midlife improvement for many of their future homes. And they've got something like 10,000 homes, Chris. So, you know, it's an iterative process. You know, we've brought this opportunity to Connexus, they're engaging with it, they've modelled the homes, but the position they've got to now is that they're kind of stuck because they can't find a contractor to deliver the work, and they want to be getting on site by Christmas to start this. So, to be honest, I don't know about the new build standards. That's not really an area that maybe somebody else on the call can comment on that briefly. And I'm sure there must be one or two other examples around. Oh, and Gordon's just popping up saying there are various architects around the place. So I could list Archetype, who are in Herefordshire, and also I've mentioned Tesha earlier along Wenlock Edge, and there you are. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that's probably enough from me, actually. And I know the time as well, Richard. So
Simon, thank you ever so much. There's loads and loads of questions coming in, and some really good.
Great,
questions.
wonderful.
As I say, will all be collected by the conference team and
Absolutely.
followed. So Simon, we're at 1 minute past 11, so we've been very generous with your time. You've had 3% more than, yeah. So just like to say there was a lot of love coming in for you on the chat towards the end of your presentation.
Wonderful.
When I think your heart emerged, which is lovely. So thank you ever so much on behalf of everybody for that fascinating last 30 minutes.